Well, it's the international break, and that gives us time for a little break in the story about Arsenal women's managerial search. There, we're on winning form after that win over Juventus. We did the instant reaction on YouTube last week, the live stream, which went down a treat actually. We really enjoyed that. Looking back on that late Lena Hurtig goal on the win over Juventus. All quiet on the managerial front at the moment, and we're just around the corner from a busy few days of international football. The most recent news, I guess, before we get into today's guest, is that Leah Valti has dropped out of the Switzerland squad, so I won't be seeing her at Bramall Lane on Tuesday, which is really annoying. But Lotte Wood-Moy has been called up to the England squad, so there's an extra Arsenal player in the Lionesses squad. England take on the USA on Saturday, and then Switzerland on Tuesday. And we've got a host of other international action. And well, there was Arsenal involvement today, actually. The England under-19s, Michelle Agyemang scored and missed a penalty. So we're up and running. We have an Arsenal goal scorer on the board. But let's come to our guest. Delighted to welcome Lumi onto the podcast this week. Now, if you read issue one of the Arsenal Women Guna Fanzine, Guna Fanzine Arsenal Women edition, sorry, Lumi wrote about how social media has fueled the Arsenal women's fan base, looking back on since sort of Euro 2022 and the power of social media and how it's made Arsenal stand out. Now, Lumi actually wrote her dissertation on this, which was submitted this summer. So we've both been reading that again this afternoon, and we're going to discuss it with her because there's so many interesting topics to go into. Lumi, look, thanks for coming on. Is there a part of you that almost doesn't want to talk about the dissertation, the amount of time and effort and energy you've put into it? Do you want to just put it behind you?
No, it's a topic I love, so I'm more than happy to talk about it. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure, and I will point fans towards your piece if they haven't read it already in the latest Guna. So you interviewed 12 Arsenal women fans who you selected randomly, submitted this summer. Congratulations as well, you've graduated with that degree. Firstly, you touched on sort of the participation of players, and this is something that's sort of evolved, I guess, in terms of the differences between men and men's and women's football in terms of how players are perceived by fans, perhaps, how some will have, more favourites that perhaps attract them to the club. Some, if you believe social media or not, will even almost follow them from club to club as well. So how important has it been for Arsenal and engaging the fans, using some of these key players and particularly I think some of the Lionesses who've been in this Arsenal side?
I think it's massive, like especially from the ones I interviewed, the players who played in the Dutch squad that won Euros. I think I had at least three or four mentioning them. So they was fresh at the time, and many of them started following that previous DVD generation in the Arsenal. So that was another massive thing. But then, of course, Lionesses winning the Euros, and I think especially Leah Williamson being the captain, I think that brought in loads of fans as well. But of course, like Swedish fans from Sweden following our four Swedish players, that's a massive thing as well. And the Australians, especially now after the World Cup. I know so many Aussies, and the fact that we went there and played friendly as well. I think it's just like getting bigger and bigger all the time, and the more nationalities we have, the better for the fans as well.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that you wrote your dissertation on something like this because I'm sure like reflecting back on writing a dissertation about something that you're not interested in, like that is not the easiest thing in the world. And I think obviously when you're a fan, like it probably was quite an easy choice for you to write about this. But when did you first like think actually I could do my dissertation on something that I really, really care about? Or was it just like you'd always had your heart set on kind of writing it about that, or did it come about kind of by accident, really?
Actually, I did write my dissertation when I did my bachelor's as well about Arsenal. So it was a kind of easy topic for me to then do another dissertation about. So yeah, I would say I can't remember what was the thing that kind of changed my mind. And I was like, hey, really, I could do something that I really enjoy doing anyways. But yeah, for me, it was like clear, like, because I knew I wrote my bachelor thesis about it as well. I was like, yeah, just gonna follow the same route now.
And I guess we should go into your own story, because as a fan from Finland, there's not necessarily the Arsenal women contingent. In fact, you'd probably be more likely to go down the Tottenham route, in terms of
Yeah.
Finnish players in the WSL. But I was with you out in Gothenburg, and as you say, we were meeting Swedish fans who were fans of, I think, probably Stina would have been the main one, and there were adverts of Rosa Kafaji on the back of buses, which was amazing. But even out there were German fans, Dutch fans, people from everywhere who travelled over. So what's your sort of individual story? What brings you to Arsenal and Arsenal women?
Um, I started with the men, which I
Mm.
think quite many internationals did in the back in the day. Arsenal men came to play a friendly in Finland. I would say 2013 maybe, against Man City, and they ended up winning. And I chose the better team. I wasn't a football fan before then, so it was just purely just going there and enjoying the vibes and then choosing the better team. And it ended up being Arsenal. It took me a long, long time then to really like find a women's team because they didn't have any coverage in Finland. So it was literally only like after the Euros or during the Euros when I got like into women's football. I used to play myself, still only followed the men's team, but yeah, I'm so happy I found the women's team, and now I'm supporting more even than the men, although I am a men's fan as well. But yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that Arsenal just have this like effect on, fans in general, especially Arsenal women. And like you talked about it a lot in the dissertation, and it really like resonated with me in terms of their like fan culture and what they've built. And obviously like that was a quite a like predominant part of your discussion was when you were interviewing these people that they discussed like how they always wanted to be at the games. And I'm exactly the same. Like even though I don't like live near, I will literally travel down that same road back and forth, trying to go to as many games as possible. And then obviously like having these discussions like with these fans, like what was sort of the key sort of reason why Arsenal, like compared to these other clubs? Like obviously you resonate with that as well, like having gone into the women, like what makes Arsenal sort of stand out, especially in terms of the women's side, in terms of the fan culture? Like what did you find sort of stood out in when you were asking those kind of questions?
I would say it was just the social media, the fact that they had a very good marketing plan. They were on TikTok doing this, especially I can think of the marketing video for Wolfsburg game when they were like listing alphabets and there was like a zebra and stuff like that. And then in the next game, they really like brought those inflatable zebras with them to the game. So I feel like that was the number one thing. It was just like the social media. And I feel like now clubs are following Arsenal, doing the same things. Chelsea, Spurs, City started their women's accounts finally. At the time when I wrote my dissertation, they didn't even have own channels for the women's team. So I think that's crucial thing that why Arsenal like back in the day. And I think they really timed it well as well with the Euros. I feel like especially since then, because they were the ones having the content out there, that's the main reason why people then chose Arsenal.
Mm. I mean, what's interesting to me is you've almost got like Arsenal Woman in terms of the club's Twitter account, and then Arsenal Woman Twitter as a whole, and potentially Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever else, and whatever's going to happen there. But that community actually has now existed, but it's not a part of what Arsenal post as well. So it's become this sort of online social media community, and it really seems like so many people. Even when I was in Turin recently, there would be people come up to me and sort of say, "Oh, I've seen your work online or whatever," or even have just said, "What was the under 21 score today?" Try and get some information out of you. But the amount of people there who I noticed coming up to each other and say, "Oh, I've seen your tweets," or and just fans who have said, "Oh, you dropped me a message online. Nice to meet you." How we talk so negatively about social media a lot, I feel like, but actually in this context, it's really helped. And I think quite a lot of people who would perhaps be quite shy as well, and maybe not take these steps out to go and watch football, not take these steps out to meet other people. But it seems like social media has really opened that up, and there's something quite special going on there.
Yeah, for real. I remember like I used to go to games alone at first, which I know many people do, and that's kind of the way to go. And I still kind of felt part of community because there was this big social media community still going on. I went to the games, didn't talk to anyone, but I still felt like I'm part of this big group. Then, of course, saw supporters clubs. Like these meet-up thingies that they arranged, and then went there, and from then on, then little by little got friends. But it was crazy because I didn't know anyone at first, but I still like felt like I belong in here, and I kind of know these people, although I didn't know anyone. So yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of like going on from that, like what you were saying and what Freddie was saying, like there's now, I think, not even just on social media, like if we separate from the Arsenal channels, like there's now, I'm gonna use the word influencers, but there's now people who's literally, going out and create content on like Arsenal, and they're now, famous in terms of the fans, and people will go up to them and know who they are and things like that. And we're definitely not grouping ourselves in that category, I hope. It is really strange in that way, and obviously predominantly discussed in the dissertation, like about Arsenal and things like that. But how much of a role do you think maybe those people have in growing Arsenal women? Because if they've got such a big following and people are seeing this on, especially on TikTok, I mean that's huge for those kind of people making content. Like, do you think that kind of plays into why Arsenal became like, especially the women became so big, and a lot of people jumping on sort of the bandwagon in that sense because they've seen these groups of people coming together and people talking about it and creating content about it, and that's even separate to what the club is doing.
Yeah, definitely. I also studied that in my dissertation, and asked like people whether they think that like if the club is posting something, it has like a more influence on them, or if the people they know post something. And it was if the people they know post something that has like a more effect on them, and they feel like more FOMO
Yeah.
because they see that, oh, my friends are there. So yeah, I would say that's a massive thing. So I would say the social media boom first started with the club, but then these influencer people kind of took over, and now they are more influenced, like they influence more than the club itself. So yeah, massive.
One thing that's interesting to me is the passage you wrote about in terms of how clubs are more successful to have sort of separate Arsenal men and Arsenal women accounts. And I was studying the England cricket team this week for another essay at university actually, and looking at actually the success of grouping them together in terms of fancying them both as equally. But I guess almost with separate communities, and then obviously the crossover and people who go to both and support both, that Arsenal have, benefited from being able to have separate accounts, in that at the end of the day it's just another account to follow and people can keep across both. But what we really haven't seen in recent years is any kind of marketing really from men players, on that side of things, whereas other clubs we do. Before the Spurs game, I had a look at their channels, and there was Vicario and Ange Postecoglou promoting the game, and obviously we turned them over, so that wasn't successful at all. And I've seen the US have been training at Tottenham as well, and I'm sure that's going to be a curse in one way or another before Saturday. But we get distracted. But how interesting is that to see that Arsenal almost don't look to bring the men's players in to much of the content at all, and just keep the women standalone, and maybe sometimes there's the odd bit of content out of the men's players, but compared to other clubs there's not really that forced thing where they get someone in front of a camera and say, look, can you promote the women's team? Everything they do on there seems to be quite organic instead of forcing any kind of content from the men's side.
Yeah, I think they used to do it more.
Yeah.
Like now I haven't seen anything, but they definitely used to do it, and I think it's crazy because it's all about this one club mentality. And for example, my brother, who's a big like Gunner as well, mostly follows the men, but also kind of knows everything about the women's team as well. I would say it's sad that we don't do it more, because I feel like there's loads of more potential, and the men's fans could come and watch the games at the Emirates, because I know it's hard to get tickets anyways. So they could just come and watch the women's team, because it's easy to get the tickets there at least, and the team is amazing. So I think it's a lost potential. I know it sounds bad, but I have some Chelsea fan friends as well, and I know most of them are in like more men's fans than the women's fans, but they don't really have like women's fans and men's fans. So I would say it's currently a lost potential for Arsenal. I think they should do more and bring this one club mentality kind of back, because it used to be there, but now it's kind of gone.
I guess the thing with that though, just to follow up, is that you could almost criticize the club for putting three players in front of the camera and all reading off a script saying come and support the women's team. But and almost maybe some of the women's fans would react to that quite cynically and saying, actually, if any of them really, really care, let's see them down at a game, let's see them promoting it a bit more, maybe on their own social media channels, which, as you say, even that's what they do before, simply pop up a post, maybe saying well done to the women's team before. I think when they were in the FA Cup final in 2021, I remember Arsenal shared some footage of a lot of the men's players watching it. But do you almost think it's better for actually if the men's players show an interest, then let's see that, but let's not just, I guess, force them to promote it? Or do you think just the impact of a couple of them using their profiles to promote the women's team would have a really positive effect?
I mean, I think it would be cool, but honestly, I don't know if we need it. Like, because I feel like we're so separate from like the men's fans, but it would be nice. And if they did that, it needs to come from their hearts. If it's like just a forced message, not gonna work, I would say so.
I do think there's a lot in terms of Arsenal. I would put them quite high on the like. I know there's a lot of Arsenal women fans who maybe aren't Arsenal men fans, but I think there's a large proportion of people who support both, and I think that's like you say, that's a lot more than like I've seen in clubs like Chelsea, for example. Like not many of the men's fans, I think, from what I know, go with and like watch the women very often. And it surprises me because you look at a club like Chelsea who is successful, in terms of trophies and winning games. I mean, they're literally unbeaten. So as much as it pains me to say, so it's kind of really strange that it doesn't translate in that way. And yeah, I think it's Arsenal kind of stand out to me in that way that they have quite a lot of fans who are like fans of both teams. But I did want to kind of touch on something because I found like to like reflecting back on writing a dissertation, like I know when you write something like this, there's a lot that you try and cover in such a short, like you think it's a long piece, but it really isn't when you really get into it. And what I always find interesting is what doesn't make it in the dissertation, like things that you maybe want to talk about that like or came up or you thought about and actually you couldn't fit in. Was there anything, not putting you on the spot, was there anything that kind of you found or you like thought about that maybe you didn't include or you would have wanted to talk about more or research more that you found interesting?
I can't really think of this one now, but I wrote my bachelor's thesis on like gender equality, so it was more based on that, and I think now I left it kind of. I didn't talk about it that much because I did my bachelor's thesis about it. Um, but yeah, no, I can't think of anything that I now left out. There must be something, but yeah, I just can't think of anything right now. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Put you on the spot there. That was is always the hardest thing to like remember when you're doing it. Like I feel like you come up,
Yeah,
you're just like overwhelmed by it all. But I think it's
yeah,
like
for
a really
real.
interesting and obviously there's I presume there's little people that are writing about like women's football in the dissertations and I think like it could be like really big and I think like that's something that more people are going to consider doing and I hope that more people kind of read like your dissertation and think wow I could do that because it's great probably a lot easier to write about something that you're like passionate about than it is to write about something that you're not, so I think that's like something I'd like to see more of, especially in terms of increasing research as well, which is huge for women's football.
Yeah.
One thing, I guess, to go on a little bit more of a negative note, but a lot of sort of pundits and journalists sort of said when Jonas Eidevall resigned, oh, a massive part of that is the fact of Arsenal's big fan base, the fact that when you are packing out the Emirates, the praise is great, but the criticism is going to be even louder. And for me, there was a little bit of it was a little bit lazy, some of the reporting and going, oh, they had a couple of bad games, the fans got annoyed and Jonas resigned. Whereas actually, if you watch it week in, week out, you could see that the problems were so much further than that. But do you think the fact, 30,000 people booing Arsenal off or booing Jonas Eidevall, making signs in the crowd, how big a part is that for the fact that he actually chose to resign rather than being sacked? Those noises obviously got through one way or another.
No, I think the game's going to the right direction, kind of. Like finally we can see these kind of things as well. And the graffiti on the wall and everything. Like I feel like it's kind of cool, but it's also scary in the way how like what fans can do. But also like we see this in the men's game, I would say every week, maybe not every week, but like very often. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a bad or a negative thing. I feel like it was kind of needed anyways. So if the fans were the ones who like got the message then to the club, I think that's only a positive thing in my opinion.
Yeah, do you like think that sort of the future of Arsenal women and like how we praise them a lot for the work that they're doing now, and what do you kind of think that they could do sort of not better, but is there anything that specifically stands out to you that they could be doing? I know we talked a little bit about potentially like involving the men's side of the club, like obviously that's huge, but we talked about like the club as a whole, the supporters club, and obviously the other people that create content. Is there anything that you kind of think other clubs are doing that Arsenal aren't, or anything like that? I mean, I've been for some reason seeing a lot of Chelsea women content on my TikTok at the moment. I mean, they are all over with all of the trends, like all of the players, like really kind of trying to, I think, build on that a lot. Like, could Arsenal do better at times, or do you think they're doing quite well in that sense?
The thing is, I feel like they did well, but something happened because they're not posting that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like they are posting some TikToks, but they are not the ones leading like social media game anymore. Not at all. Especially now marketing the Emirates games. Like the players are posting about the tickets like one day before or one night before. So I think something is wrong. Like I don't know if there is no like social media budget anymore or what's going on, but definitely I agree. Like I can see more other clubs now on my social media as well, which I don't like.
I think, do you think maybe it's like t sorry to interrupt, Freddie, but do you think it's maybe taking it for granted in a way? Because obviously we've seen, last season Arsenal were all, I think on the season before, Arsenal were kind of all over it in terms of pushing the Emirates games, and we started to see those attendances. And I think there's been a huge discussion, maybe a little bit unfairly this season, about the attendances dropping slightly. Is this the end of like the momentum? And I think maybe the club has a slight role to play in that we know we've built something, and instead of continuing to build it and keep doing what they were doing, they kind of just stopped a little bit and maybe thought, okay, now we've got the fan base, these fans are going to keep coming, and then it maybe just like took that for granted in a way. I don't know if you guys think that too, but it does seem like they've stopped putting as much effort in as they did, and maybe it's a case of just thinking that it would just continue maybe a lot better than it would.
Yeah, I mean that's at least how it feels at the moment. Like
Yeah.
we don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, but that's literally how it feels. Yeah.
I think just a couple of points there in terms of one, when we've not had a good run of form, I think as fans, you're not going to want to see players, with some more playful TikTok content. Whereas if you're Chelsea and you've won 7 out of 7, you can probably let them do whatever they want, can't you, to an extent? But I do agree there's perhaps been a little bit less on the social side, but then the club have to be careful, don't they? Even yesterday, they've posted that thing about Mariona Caldente doing the Colney karaoke, and there were some technical issues with the car. And the first thing I thought was, well, there's some technical issues with the ticketing site at the moment that a lot of fans picked up on that as well. And that's the life of a social media person, right? Because you probably scheduled that post a week ago, forgot about it, it's gone out, and then you thought, oh, maybe that, and maybe you don't even know about the technical side. But that's when, social media can be that double-edged sword. The other thing is what we have seen from Arsenal is even last season was actually experimenting with not marketing some games as much. That's just the one point I'd want to throw back is maybe that's going to be an all season approach to get a bit more of that long term idea of what is our core base of fans. A lot of people, Lumi said about the Brighton game in terms of when there were 20,000 there, all of them were committed. Maybe there were less families there, less people at their first game. It was a real core group of fans. And maybe if Arsenal are learning, you know what, if we don't market games, we're going to have 20, 25,000, maybe 30, 35 in a weekend. That's still very, very impressive compared to where we were. So do you actually think there's almost what they're doing now is almost not marketing or marketing less, but they might learn a little bit more from that?
Yeah, well, that's the way to go as well. Like if that's their
Mhm.
plan, I mean, it's a good plan, but then Emirates Stadium is too big for it. Like
Mm.
it's good to try things out, but at the moment it's I don't know. From fan perspective, I don't think it's working because the stadium is half empty. But yeah, if that's what they wanna figure out, and then move the women's team to a which is smaller than
Mm.
bigger stadium than Meadow Park, but like smaller than Emirates next season, then yeah, go for
Yeah.
it.
It's interesting. It's almost coming off that high of Wolfsburg, and then, because even coming down from that, I think the opening day game was maybe against Liverpool, and they had a good 40, 50,000 sort of the first day of last season. But, obviously results play a massive part. I don't doubt, I really don't. If we were in a Champions League semi-final in a couple of months' time, I think we would probably pack it out, wouldn't we? And you look at Meadow Park and how that's sold out every single time. But yeah, obviously there is a drop off when we come to midweek and Champions League fixtures and playing some of the different teams in the WSL. But one thing, Lumi, as well, the away support and how incredible that's been because it's broken records up and down the country the last few years. And again, we go back to actually this is not a one-off thing. This is an every week, wherever you're going, down up and down the country or overseas, there's this core of away fans who are then joined up. With maybe people who live up there or other people who have traveled. What's the secret then to that success in terms of not just having these brilliant home attendances, but having a loyal away following as well?
I think one of the secrets is the fact that there are fans from all over. Like
Mm.
at least like my friends come from Norway, from Germany, and once like I remember I went to the match in Munich like 1.5 years ago, not the one now this season, and it was
Yeah.
barely like 10 of us. Like it wasn't that many of us, but most of the people there were like locals from Germany. And then like from then on, I feel like we had the first meetup then at the Wolfsburg, or supporters club did the first meetup then at the Wolfsburg away game, and it was already like double, maybe even
Yeah, that,
triple. I
that
don't
was a
know
really good turnout.
how
Yeah.
many times the people, and so I feel like especially like supporters club is the one who's doing well with like things like that. I feel like we could have potential to have even more if maybe Arsenal helped us with like coaches or some kind of like away travels or something. But I think the fans living all over is kind of the secret for it. But also like I just want to go and hang out with my friends. Like if I go somewhere or I want to go and see, I'm now going to Oslo, so I've never been in Norway, so I just want to go to Norway to see Norway as well, hang out with my friends, and it's just a good excuse to kind of go and do something.
I think the community sense as well in terms of Arsenal, like we talk so much about the attendances at, the Emirates. We talk about like breaking records at home and we talk about Meadow Park. For me, like the away support and in terms of the crowd and the community, that is where it is at its peak. Like I think anybody who goes to an away game, you usually tend to see the same people. Like maybe it's just because we're all closer, we're all in one section and I think that does play a massive part in it. Like that's when I feel the most sort of all together and community feel like at away games. I think Tottenham away this season was absolutely crazy in terms of, the amount of people that were there and obviously there was a huge commitment as well to like being vocal and singing. And I think there's a divide in women's football. There's the people who maybe just want to go and like that's great. They want to help grow the game and they want to go for a day out. And then there's the very loyal herd that go, and we try our absolute best to sort of make it as loud as possible, and the players notice that, and we saw that after the Tottenham game. So that does play a huge part, I think. Like there's a preference for me, and I'm sure many others, to want to go to away games more because of that atmosphere and the vibe and the community feel and seeing people. And definitely credit to the supporters club, because like pre and post match is obviously huge as well for these games. So and obviously like the fan walks and things like that. I think it's like, yeah, I think the away games kind of aren't talked about enough. I think in terms of what Arsenal do, I think we're miles ahead of pretty much everybody else in that sense. I don't think I even saw Manchester United at Chelsea the other week, and I thought if they're second, if they're being called second in the league in terms of best away spot, then I don't think we're even in the same sort of ranking as anybody else. We really do bring the numbers, and I also think we bring the noise, and that's just me kind of going off on one there. But I think it's such a huge part of building that fan engagement is when you see those away games, it makes you want to go more, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say it's the people. Like that's why I go there. It's the people. I do enjoy the football as well, but just like going out with your friends, doing things together. We went to Man United away, and it was literally just Arsenal fans in the hotel, and yeah, it's the community.
Definitely.
And one thing with that in terms of the core group of fans is there was that sort of bring the noise area that's been moved. I think there was those two blocks sort of behind the dugout last season that's been moved to behind the goal at one end of the Emirates. There's a lot of talk a lot of the time about transferring sort of the atmosphere and the chants across from Boreham Wood to the Emirates. What's sort of your take on what the atmospheres have been like at the Emirates this season? Obviously been tough in results wise, but is there anything I guess the club can do to maybe help that in terms of building the atmosphere?
I don't know if club can do anything. I personally stayed in block two, and I kind of hope that we could like make the noise travel and kind of have the chance like all around the stadium. I would say it hasn't really worked, at least not yet. But I think also because there hasn't been that many people like at the games anyways, that's been one of the issues as well. But yeah, I don't really know like how the club could help to make it better, but yeah, somehow like I need to still go to block 10 and try the atmosphere there, but block 2 has been sadly quite quiet this season.
Yeah, Block 10, I think, has been hit by the divide, like you say, like with those who stayed in Block 2 and then the group that they're now in Block 10. I think that was maybe a risky decision from the club, because I had this sort of vision that everyone would kind of move over, but I know there was mixed sort of opinions on that, and a lot of people, I get it, wanted to stay, but that's obviously become a problem because there's a quite a big gap between the two blocks, and that's kind of not translated in the way that maybe we thought it would in terms of everybody moving. And also, there's so many people, I think, maybe talking about something the club could do. I'm not sure if there's anything they can do now, but the amount of people that bought in the bring the noise section who aren't bringing the noise is a bit frustrating. I think like I kind of went with the vision that I would see everybody that would, kind of like an away crowd, really. Everybody wanted to get up and sing, and unfortunately, there's quite a lot of people who are coming and going, selling tickets, not going to every game. And also people who are just coming and not wanting to sort of get up and sing and things like that. I know Arsenal have tried with the band, which I actually think has worked a lot better than I thought it would. I do think that was really effective at Meadow Park last season, and I think it's kind of translated, especially at the start of games, before games, and things like that. But in terms of in general, it's not. I think you're right. There's not enough people there for it to become loud enough for the chant to travel. And then when it does travel, I think we're singing at separate times, so it's just not working as well as we thought it would in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Yeah, and you can't really, sorry, and you can't really hear them either. Like I thought it would be easy, but you can't really like hear the people in block 10. Or if you can, then you just can't join the like chant that's at the same time. Yeah.
How much of this then, in terms of, I feel like if we had you on a year ago, we'd be talking so much more positively, wouldn't we, about Arsenal and sort of the fans. But it feels like as the attendances plateau a little bit, there's a little bit of, where do we go from here? So from your perspective, obviously Arsenal have shot to the top of women's football in terms of attendances actually without having this sort of trophy success, league success, obviously the two Conti Cups, but fans have wanted more, and I think they've been willing to be patient. But how much of it this season do you think is actually, it's linked with the football not being as good. The games haven't been as great to watch, I guess, under Jonas Eidevall at the start of the season. But also, that's not been a factor previously. So, how important is actually what we see on the pitch? And is it maybe a case of the first couple of years, fans almost weren't as fussed and they were just getting behind the team? They obviously, saw the efforts that were made when we had the injury crisis. But at the moment, it feels like actually now they have been here and they have been here for a while. Are they almost more focused on the football itself than they were before, or am I wrong to say that?
Yeah, no, I literally feel like so too. And I don't know if I wrote it in my dissertation, but one of the questions like for the future would be like, what if we won the trophies? What if like would we have like double the amount of fans then? Because we haven't been that good like for the past few years. It might be that it might be that I don't know, fans thought that we're gonna win everything, and now that we didn't like win, I mean, we did win some things, but like not the league, not Champions League, or not even close last season. So I think it probably was like we got lots of fans because of the Euros, and then yeah, there was a high. We got a trophy as England, but then like when you chose a club and the club didn't do that well, it could be that the fans just don't want to follow anymore. But I think that's a bit sad. Like if you are a fan and you don't want to follow just because you're not winning trophies, but yeah, might be the case.
I do think you were definitely right. I think last season was riding a high, and I do think like that was when more people sort of jumped on, especially following, I think, the Wolfsburg game as well, like playing into all of that and then looking at last season, almost the trophies didn't matter. Like the football was less of a priority. Some people didn't agree with that. I know that was a huge sort of topic of controversy that people were jumping on, and it was less about that and it was more about building something in the community, which is still a huge aspect. And I still think there's a large amount of the fans who wouldn't turn away if Arsenal won nothing. I think there's a huge loyalty that's being built there now. Like you say, like go and see your friends. Like that's never gonna change. Like whether Arsenal are winning the league or they're not winning the league, it's something bigger than that now. And for most people, I think would agree with that and say that that would be the case. But we are seeing a drop in attendances in some ways. We are still seeing that at home. I think that's still maybe there's some question marks around that, but I don't think that's the loyal group of people. I think that's the others who maybe came when it was the hype and now have pulled away. So I think Arsenal have really got to focus on that core group. That's their priorities, is what they can do for them. And if you can, get those 20, 30,000 people and really focus on them and worry less about bringing new people in, that sort of seems like more of a way to go forward in terms of keeping the people happy, not just in terms of trophies and playing good football, but in terms of their actions, like that we've seen recently of being a bit not so not so what we would expect of Arsenal. And I think that they need to kind of really be careful about that, the kind of message behind the club rather than sort of what Arsenal win, things like that. Obviously, that's still hugely important, but I do kind of want them to be successful as well, because I do think that could help. I mean, I keep thinking about Wembley, like how big it would be to be in an FA Cup final and have all of the Arsenal fans there. Like I feel like we've missed that opportunity too many times. And if you look at what happened in Wolverhampton, for example, that was huge and that was a Conti Cup. No offense to the Conti Cup, but I think there's definitely bigger attendances and bigger sort of events really that could happen and that could really build like women's football beyond those international tournaments.
Yeah, definitely. Would be so cool to go to Wembley. I went to the FA Cup game now, like last year, this year still, but like
Yeah.
last season, and just as a neutral, it was amazing. Like I've never seen that many Man United fans at the women's game or Spurs fans. Yeah, I that would be amazing as an Arsenal fan to go and watch.
Yeah, I still haven't done press at Wembley as well, so selfishly I'll be watching every one of our FA Cup games with a little bit closer. And yeah, we've had some unlucky draws as well previously, City and Chelsea sort of knocking us out. But Daisy spoke on there about the club maybe needing to put a little bit more care into those core group of fans. And one thing that we're going to have to get your opinion on it is the Bayern Munich game being moved from the Emirates to Meadow Park. Now, there's ticketing issues at the moment. We're expecting them to be resolved in the next couple of days and fans to be able to buy tickets again. Renee Slager's accepted it was a bump in the road, but was keen to reference back to the good work Arsenal have done. But even I've spoken to fans who maybe are predominantly more involved on the men's side, and even they've agreed it's a bad decision by Arsenal. It's, even whatever you think of the decision, it should have been something that they recognised earlier on, and they communicated to fans, look, this could happen, and if it does, this is where it's going to be played. It was almost the fact that fans were left in limbo for a while, and it was the first time for a while, Lumi, that the supporters club have actually come out and been quite critical of the club. So how important is it now that the next few steps the club makes, are sort of making it up to some of the fans? And what went wrong, do you think, with the communication over the Bayern game?
I mean, I hope there will be something, because I feel like just a little statement about like things going wrong from the club is not enough. And they really need to do something, because the women's fans are disappointed now. I'm a season ticket holder, and even the season ticket window yesterday for the tickets, like there were loads of problems. So it took me like 15 minutes to even get through. So yeah, I would say the fans are now disappointed in a club. And especially I know it's not the men's players' fault, but it somehow seems like now they're angry at them, which is not like right either. So I don't know, something needs to be done, and I still hope there will be some kind of statement thing from the club, and kind of like, yeah, it's nice to get a voucher to like Arsenal Direct store, but hey, come on, like this is bigger than that. So I don't really know like how they would now make us happy again, but something needs to change. And yeah, it's such a shame. Like it's a Champions League, like for us, like it's a massive big game, the last one as well. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Anything else from you, Daisy? Because I've got sort of one question to wrap it up with, which I guess is just from your perspective, Lumi, if you were to work at Arsenal now in terms of the marketing and social media, what would be the sort of first things you do, sort of short term and long term, and where would your priorities be? Would they be with maintaining that sort of 25, 30,000, or would they be looking to bump these attendances back up again and try and bring in these numbers, market the games a little bit more? What would you be looking to do, and what should the club be doing?
I mean, as a fan point of view, I would love to see more fans out there. Like that would be my main priority. I feel like it's sad if they are happy with just like half empty stadiums. I feel like they should go for as big as they can, because they know now that there is potential. So why to just, I don't know, like it doesn't make any sense for me why not to fill the stadiums, because they know they can do it. So I don't know, like content wise, what I would do, but maybe involve the players more in the content again, because now I feel like it's just very general, just like posting training pictures and stuff. I would love to see those. I mean, they did the documentaries, which I think was a good thing, but like more funny, like TikToks videos and stuff. I know we talked about it, that the form wasn't that good, and maybe that's the reason why they didn't do it. But as a fan, that's something I would love to see, and that's what we talk about with my friends. Like, hey, did you see this post? Hey, did you see this post? So I would go for more kind of the funny things and funny stuff on social media.
I agree with you. I think Arsenal have got two key advantages. They've got the players that people know and they've got the fans, and I think they've missed out on both completely. I think the player content is good at times, they do the trends here and there on TikTok and that's great, but they've got these players also who I like it when they do content with players who maybe don't get as much recognition, because if you're a loyal fan, you will want to see those players that, don't get as much time. You don't always want to see, Leah and Beth and the England girls. You want to see sort of Stina, and you want to see Leah Volti, and you want to see, players like that. And also the fans as well. Like, I don't think there's enough content. Arsenal don't use it enough, just to go and make videos like of the fans, with the fans, a documentary, anything like that. I think that would be absolutely huge. Like, play on your advantage, play on what you've got. Like, that you could make some fantastic content with some of the people who are at these games, who go every week, who travel all over, who are, extremely funny and, great characters for Arsenal to use. And I would absolutely love to see that. And if they do that, I'm gonna, say that I said that first, because if it's in the
You're going to
works
be
at
on
the
there.
moment.
They'll be filming you up and down.
Now I've said that, expecting whoever's watching to reach out to me. I would love to be in it. But no, there are so many people that I think would be fantastic on that. I mean, Jerry would do that in a heartbeat, I'm sure. So that I think you've got to kind of do that more. You've got to go and you could just go and film, outside the games or at the games or, things like that. And I know other clubs are looking at doing that as well. Even in the men's games, they're collaborating with influencers who are going to do like day in the life videos and things like that. I mean, that's what I think Arsenal are missing out on hugely. And yeah, it would be great if they could really build on the advantages that they've already got. They've already built that fan base. They've got the players. There must be a reason why they're not doing it as much. But it would be great to see some of that in the future, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree. It would be cool to see, like, I don't know, someone from the club coming to Coronet and then taking like
Yeah.
pictures of the fans or something. That would be so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting perspectives. Certainly from you two as well, because it took me half an hour to edit a TikTok video the other day, so it's probably not my area of expertise. But certainly, one thing, that I certainly agree with is Arsenal have got a head start. They've done a lot right, and we can't expect them to, put hours and hours into marketing each game. And that's probably something that's not viable for them. And again, is why they've trialed that, at times this season is to think, actually, if we're going to play more games at the Emirates, we can't get the whole marketing team and everyone to be making sure every game we're doing our best to sell it out. But definitely it's taking advantage of the fan base. We've got a very lucky, a special one, as you say, who spend so much money, commit time and that loyalty. And I know that's maybe, there's areas where fans actually say, you know what, if a club like Liverpool can put on a supporters coach with a smaller fan base, probably smaller budget women's side, haven't, won a lot recently, obviously, if they can do it, then, why can't Arsenal as well? And there's a few things that I think that, we will see the fans start to demand. But really, really interesting to talk to you, to read through the dissertation. As we say, that's summarized in far fewer words on the latest edition of the Guna fanzine, Arsenal women issue. So do go and have a read of that. But really good to talk through that and get into a wider conversation, because it's a really interesting time at the moment where we've probably gone from praising Arsenal for all the right reasons for everything they've done. But when you have done so well, it's then hard to keep that momentum up, and everything they do will also be impacted by what happens on the pitch, which at the end of the day, the people and those staff, can't control it. But great to hear from you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's obviously such an interesting topic to cover as well in your dissertation. And if you write any more, we'd love to we'd love to if you start doing a third, dissertation, we'd love to speak to you about it as well. Hopefully it's about Arsenal women. I feel like you could just write a million on them, but yeah, no, it's great to talk to you as well.
Yeah, maybe a PhD next. Let's see.
Yeah, just keep working. Well, you can help with mine next year. I wonder what I'll have to do, sort of from a sports journalism perspective. So certainly a few topics to go down. What has that dissertation led you on to now then, just to finish up, and what you're looking to sort of do in the future work-wise?
Well, that's a very good question. Now I'm working in a company called Sport Business. I'm doing TikToks for them. So it's mostly about football, but there are other sports as well, and it's more like B2B kind of side of sports. So I enjoy it because I'm kind of, I don't know if I want to make my hobby into my job or if I should just like enjoy it as my hobby. And then I'm gonna go and do media for Finland's national team now on Fridays. So that should be exciting as well.
Ah,
That's
fantastic. There
really
we go.
cool. Yeah.
You can help me edit my TikToks in future, then I can get some help and support. Louis, great to hear from you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.